Chill here with Sirius Talis Moon. This is Venus, our soul day. And the ascendant is 23 degrees Pisces, midheaven, 25 degrees Sagittarius. Moon, 29 degrees Capricorn. Let's do a thought experiment. And I mentioned Saturn Neptune ingress, which is now already happening in the sky. And the foundations, both Pluto and degree 4 is foundations, and 0 degree Aries is foundations. And I haphazardly said something about the collapse of the waveform. And I want to develop that, and I want to do a little bit of a thought experiment, trying to predict what could we see the world anew. It's both a return to the foundations, but from a wave-based form. Mars is breaking. Neptune is dual and wave. So breaking of the waveform. Saturn is glass. And when we think about, Mars is also a cat, so when we think about the two-slit experiment, for example, which was the foundation of quantum mechanics, okay? Again, it began so long ago, and I don't have I don't have a degree of theory of quantum mechanics in my brain. Just some books that I read, being a common person that opens popular physics books, a history of physics and stuff like that. So I'm going to try. And people, now here's the thing, some people have said, no, but in the academia you did this, you did that. Yes, but I did not do physics degree, okay? um, and then what other people say, yeah, but because if I would present it differently, people say, yeah, but you're not a doctor of physics. Of course, I'm not a doctor of physics. That's the whole point, that we are all looking at the science as individuals, because we are all affected by it. Now, definitely, Pluto, 4 degrees Aquarius, is foundation of. The moon is going to cross Pluto today, so we'll probably have more revelations. Foundations of core unit of gravity, core unit of power, the nuclei. Now, definitely the building of particle accelerators. I can see it with the Saturn Neptune. Okay, I can see why, because Saturn Neptune is foundation of building of something, of waveform. Mars is quick movement, but Saturn can also delay that. So it can be a structure of particle accelerator, but it can also be the question, does it stand the test of time? Okay, Neptune is also the question in the debate upon scientific questions, the debate upon the foundation of physics, and reinventing the foundation of physics happens every once in a couple of centuries, and it's happening now. Now, the collapse of the waveform. First of all, the collapse of the waveform is consciousness, which I previously mentioned, because we have looked at let's say if we talk about quantum, so we say, we observe an experiment at one point and we take a snapshot. Then that snapshot, from the point of view that it takes the snapshot, it can alter the probability of, let's say, the particle, because it's the dual photon and photoelectric, okay? Photon and waveform, which later is also electricity, but because electricity is just heat. Exciter is the threshold of heat. Okay, if I want to capture, I don't know, the flame of this candle in electricity, I would need to put a metal through this candle, and then hopefully not electrocute myself, and then close a circuit, stick something in that can light, and then I have. Now I would need the pluses and the minuses that usually the magnets polarize the pluses and the minuses, and they are, I think, as far as I remember from science class, they are the circuit I would need a sensor to do it more, less damaging. I would need a sensor, and probably I could use laser to do the same thing, but I would need perhaps different sensitivity or wave-based sensitivity. Maybe I could do it through battery, but that is basically kind of like basis of engineering. Probably I got a couple of things wrong. Or maybe new ways that we can think about those foundations. Now, peaks in the thresholds are electric shocks. Okay, for example, a light, I don't say we are electrocuting light bulbs, but but it's a peak in the threshold of electricity that causes a light to light. And that's Aries. Aries takes a look at the peaks and the thresholds. Now, from the perspective of the breaking of the wave, the collapse, the breaking of the waveform at a certain time, Saturn, we might look at that inside the brain and how our consciousness can collapse the waveform and manifest into matter. Okay, it's alchemy, but I think that we will be able to look at it scientifically. If Pisces was the power of consciousness or the power of focus, definitely thought is a thing with Aries. Thoughts become thing with Aries, but there's a probability. And this can help us identify that the consciousnesses that yield certain angles and certain threshold and certain compositions of consciousness, we are expected to have different probabilities. It's almost like colors, okay? Different probabilities of collapsing the waveform. This is how they try to pick timelines for people when they hack their nervous system. They try to plant urges in the brains of people in extortion codes or intelligence. But it's also how people can manifest things. If people try to manifest something and they notice that something doesn't work so much, it is because of the watchers, that they try to collapse the waveform. They try to enter another consciousness to collapse the waveform, or all they really need is to intercept. But my prediction is that we will be looking at these thresholds, and this is what they call timelines. It's probability of timelines, and it's not tossing a dice when it comes to Aries, but actually, okay, with Pisces it can feel like tossing a dice. But with Aries, there is agency, which is also where we would see the agencies in, let's say, mass psychosis, because Saturn Neptune is mass psychosis. And then what agency? Where somebody is psychotic, somebody is in agency. So what agency collapses the waveform in a timeline of action? And we see, we can think about action potential, but here is action. And what is manifested as action. Pluto is psychology, also trauma. So the nervous system on trauma. When the nervous system is put on trauma, we have collapse of the waveform by another agency that interferes in the agency of the subject. So we are basically taking a look at if we take into the foundation of, let's say, quantum mechanics or the double slit experiment, we are looking at the consciousness of the brain function of the electricity in the brain, and we are think about technology. Okay, for example, chips are also made with such ways supposedly to intervene in the nonlinear dynamic system called the brain. And Neptune is also the duality of consciousness, consciousness as observed and consciousness as observer. And we will ask, where is the agency? Because the agency is being both observed and observer. If I'm not aware that I'm observed and I think I'm only the observer, I may think that certain things are me that are not me. If I am aware that I'm observed and I'm also the observer, then I begin to have discernment as to where am I in the I. Okay, I referred to Anneke Lucas. She was talking about John D. Rockefeller. And they programmed and tortured her so much so that only after he died she remembered things. But then they forced her to say the names and they tried to discredit her. But the editing team was not letting that bypass. And so Rockefeller was looking at her, and she was a girl. And he was looking at her and sensualizing her with his observation. And then through his observation, she began to, her sense of self was altered. This can happen, by the way, also psychically, and it can even fragment the sense of self. Of course, it was more than looking at her, there were torture and so on. But Neptune here has a dual form. It is both the technique and the leaking of the technique that allows for healing. It allows for agency into the process. The activation, Aries' activation of the I am, by the I am rather than by the observer. The limitation on the sense of self evokes emergence of remembrance. I know that this is very spiritual, but it's also very practical. It manifests as the body. In the body, it manifests as inflammation or oppression of the immune system. And the immune system here is, first of all, sidereally, it still has to do with the liver, because Pisces, Jupiter, but it is where the liver is the also commander of the army, and this is already the tropical Aries, and this denotes at the brain clarity. And the opposition would be the guts and the kidneys, which is Virgo and Libra. Again, it's not medical advice, it's astrological predictions. So, okay, this is to the people that I did not administer any medication or or treatment method here. More things that I can say. So in terms of the physics, we are going to look through laser, through radiation, at the inside of the brain action when and those quantum thresholds and timelines within the brain. And there, the observation moves into way more intimate and leaks the inside of the I am, the inside of the consciousness, and we'll see that different observers will have different results within the subject. And it will show through this wave-based, whether laser or wave-based technology that will be used to observe the foundations of the wave collapse in the brain. And we can see them as electric excitatory states, particularly around the sextile of Uranus. It's different than Gauss' theory, where we had Pluto-Uranus conjoining and Saturn opposing. So the delay came because people were looking into nonlinear dynamic systems. I don't remember when. Yes, the photoelectric was before the war. I would probably need to go through the history of physics through astrology properly, particularly photoelectric, quantum, the probability, and yes, Neptune ingress is always an ingress to what do we see through waves? What do we wavify? And we wavify the I am. Okay? In Aquarius, we wavified the internet, so the communication between people and mass media. In Pisces, we wavified beliefs and spirituality, and we have a frequency, high flying disc, and so on. In Aries, we wavify the I am, so it's both colonialism, expeditions, speculative investments, speculative scientific investments, the democration question of science. Probably we're going to have innovation both with Pluto and Aquarius, but also anything about Aries is the definition of the core unit of. Both the Pluto is the core unit of, but Aries is the foundation of. So the foundation of physics, the foundation of waves. In general, we're going to be looking at waves we haven't looked at before. And they're going to origin in consciousness, as well as where does consciousness origin. So this is very much to do with the Protestants that didn't go through the hierarchy of the saints as much as the Catholics. Okay, it's also why people talk about ritual abuse so much, because with ritual abuse, through abusing one another, they believe they have redemption. Yes, and yes, there is the gnosis part of being like God, but is also where Neptune has this dual meaning of connecting with ourselves is reconnecting with the divine, and it's gnosis that is closer to Mary Magdalene. Now here is the thing: the healing of trauma, then closer to Mary Magdalene; trauma based, closer to Jeffrey Epstein. Okay. So we're definitely, but Saturn is also glass. So collapse of the waveform into glass. It is also telescope and microscope. We're going to expand on the bandwidth of what we can observe. Farther away into space, maybe we can observe, I don't know, Neptune to greater detail. And particularly with Uranus in Gemini. So, yes, it's a Galileo clock. And we will definitely, yes, see things in new perspectives, also thanks to those technologies. Now, there is also the question of the brotherhoods, because they want to have authority over who does science, who does art, who does this, who does that. Then they have all their books burned, all their art burned, all their temples burned, everything gebroekt, and and they said that they are persecuted. Uh, so those things are also going to be kind of like background noises. Um, if I think about the periscope and the when wave collapse into glass and they break into visible, but here it is going to be more action, different frequencies of, let's say, laser. The use of glass or something like quartz, okay, may have laser watches. I think we already do. It can happen both within the brain, so this is like chip technology, or just something that is glass, or something like quartz, and the waves, the laser waves colliding to glass or quartz. There's a threshold that it takes for laser to, let's say, melt glass. Or melt, let's say they want to invade a bank. So, yes, Pluto is not by Deneb Al-Gadir yet, but then when it will be, I think we will have more such activities. Maybe now. But the question of the wave collapsing into glass, and this is also why those brotherhoods try to take control over things, because they want to control the technology and to enslave humanity, and this is why their endeavors continuously fail, and then they meticize the people that they went against and later tortured. That's why we find out about the science of Da Vinci 500 years after. Um, yeah. Like I said, Pluto in Aquarius is not just scientific revolution, it's scientific evolution. Is they can no longer hide what was hidden. They can no longer hide the technologies they used for centuries. Because people with their logic begin to understand and decipher. That is Aries. They begin to understand the logic of how something works, and how something works in praxis, how waveform breaks in praxis. It's also age of experiments, scientific experiments, but individual people are going to basically. Now, here's the thing: because of the limitations of many things, they would say you have to subscribe to your car, and you have to subscribe to this, and you have to subscribe to that, and you get a license to use this, and you have to renew the subscription, and so on and so forth. People will look for to invent things in themselves. That is Aries. How did I begin to do talismans? I did not have money to buy talismans. How did I begin to do aromatherapy? Before I studied, I did not have money to go to aromatherapist. With astrology, it was a different thing. I took a break from academia. Because of the occult. By the way, Rahu ingressed to degree 9, degree of completion, where Venus will conjoin it. Venus is conjoined in Fomalhaut, but square in Lilith, and the moon is going to go into Haze moon phase today, so not so talismanic. Um, I'm not capturing hates Moon. Thank you very much. Although it did trine Uranus. So, yes, there are people that did, that try to control the expression of people because they thought that only those who rape are free. And those who don't rape were not allowed to do science. It's not only women. Or to sing or whatnot. And then there will be a part of either Epstein list or whatnot. And those things meaning that the people, how should I say that? A father in Texas killed the man who abused his daughter. He caught this man and he was not arrested because he stopped the rape of his 5-year-old daughter. It was happening behind his own house. That's an article I read today. Now, these people, they always have to rape someone, to kill someone. So, good fathers basically allow people to express themselves. Now, the collapse of the waveform would be an attempt to collapse agency and collapse sovereignty through technology, laser, or dark occult. Okay, complete misuse of the dark occult, because when we go against agency to collapse somebody's sovereignty over nothing, okay, not because they violated sovereignty or to try to stop rape, no. But because they speak up or. And then this will always have counter effect. Those things tend to undermine themselves. And it will have scientific discovery. Okay, they used gaslighting to impair the speech of victims of abuse, and then scientifically the evidence began to be what seemed like incoherence in the testimony began to be evidence of dissociation. With Neptune, the missing is the evidence. Okay, even for people that you see, that you hear are speaking with cohesion and so on and so forth, is because they spent years recovering in spite of everything that was set up against them to recover. More to do with collapse of the waveform, with glass or radiation, affecting inflammation, affecting agency, affecting sense of self, affecting the construction of weapon and real estate or structures of real estate of the military, or safety based, the ability to secure a structure. So there will be innovations regarding this topic. Also in wartime, they would try to, I don't know, break into banks of the enemy and loot the banks. So they would need the weapon, the laser weapon to do that, or the wave-based weapon to do that. Um, they can be. Neptune can also be dissolving or melting, and this can be of iron melting. This is laser. Laser melts iron. So that's the application. It's going to be applied science. A lot of the scientific progression is going to be through wartime, so it's going to be a lot of applied science of the waveform. The frequency, think about the frequency of sound, okay? Frequency of sound can break glass. But what happens if it is a double protected glass that is supposed to be, okay? That they need basically to raise the frequency. Going from Pisces to Aries. Raise the frequency, break the bank. And then find out that they have no gold, they have silver because they already looted the gold for the extortion cult and went to India in the Indies somewhere to bring nutmeg. So that's in Indonesia. Yeah, whatever. They brought silver. And they find out there's all is missing, and then there is a red book. Oh, we thought this was zero usury bank. So it's also how waves can, how the breaking of the wave or the angle of the breaking of the wave can collapse or break the glass. Um, but they may use this in new territories, rocky land, mountain land, isolated mountains. So this can absolutely be islands. Um, now, with Saturn in Aries, let's say somebody, Saturn, Neptune, let's say somebody is helpless about being able to assert their agency in the face of something. They better not be helpless for too long, although Saturn gives duration, and it also means that when they come out of it, the duration of the response might be, although Aries is a quick sign, it's not a Scorpio sign, but it's not a Scorpio Mars, but this is Saturn. Or it can be that with explosive power, one breaks through the limitation. Think about the ghetto gates are broken and the people come out. Okay, one force of explosive power breaks the limitations that were set on the agency and sense of self. Particularly, somebody was helpless, then they take one action, and it's, how should I say that? They can try, helpless, then boom! This can unfortunately, towards the end of the Pluto-Neptune sextile, end the century with big bomb. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but because much of that helplessness, but doesn't have to happen. Okay, nothing has to happen. The mantra for Aries is nothing has to happen. Okay, no rape, no problems, and it cannot be imaginary. Authentically, zero rape, zero problems. People violate, then a person will be helpless, 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 boom. And even the person themselves might only know in the aftermath. But that's life. That's Aries is this immediate reaction. But Saturn can delay, and it can be helplessness crossing the threshold of helplessness. Boom. Now what happens when person think about a baby? They don't yet know how to respond. It's like, oh, the first time they managed to respond to something, boom, broke entire thing down. So we said wave, we said quantum, gravity. This is about using consciousness to move people, not objects. Think Frank Olson. Um, 2 birds. And they might also try to move a weapon. I don't make the rules. That's the set of opportunities and challenges in the chart. Of course, it can simply be weapon smuggling, but they can definitely try to collapse waveforms in the brain to teleportation. Again, those were things that were practiced, but I think that because Saturn Neptune can be person going missing and then showing up in another time and place, and it can be either because they are wearing a mask, and it would be also the real and the imagined. There's a lot of debate I saw around whether MK Ultra involves aliens or people, that it's their actions and not aliens, and so on and so forth. Well, technology can show, but they can be infused with planetary. If they access planetary connection through trauma, then I think Alandra Mantok talks about aliens a little bit. And whether it is or isn't, then definitely accessing those through trauma is basically negating true cohesion, and that can cause further complications. Think about the fact that the entire intelligence is Epstein. Okay. This is Saturn Neptune in Aries. Now, how safe do you feel in the world? Not good in time for the 5%. But I addressed that. I warned ahead of time. I warned ahead of time. Um, yeah. And see, there are people who say, Russia is not my enemy. Russia, da, 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 da. It's like, it's the same. Anyway, yes, Lilith squares Venus. Let's talk a little bit about Lilith squaring Venus. Venus in Pisces is, I'm not saying longing for love, but is optimistic about union, love. When I did Talisman of Venus in Pisces, it was be where it is a joy to be a woman. Because Jupiter is traveling, and Venus here, Pisces, can be even traveling into the self, or the, emphasizing on the choice of the frequency and so on and so forth. Lilith in Sagittarius reminds us that in the monotheistic context of world religions, there was only rape, no sex. So Lilith kind of tells Venus, well, currently what people believe in the world is joy to be a woman is difficult. Let's just say it's a blue ocean. If we talk about location, then it's a blue ocean to have a place where it's joy to be a woman. So we see how these two are in tension, because Venus always wants to see the choice, and not the choice in the Jupiterian sense of Jupiter Saturn, like responsibility for choices. No, she basically she's basically attuned to the psychic senses of being Venus, not being a siren in the sense of having that pointed anywhere. Okay? That is something that Lilith would explain. It says the siren is mindset of rapists. They would say that the sirens would divert the ships. Yeah, if you're going to on an expedition to rape a lot of foreign women, then sirens could call you to to divert the ship. But other than that, is not. And Venus here is very psychic. Venus in Pisces wants to blend, but with something that is authentically divinely connected. Lilith in Sagittarius reminds her that the atmosphere is problematic. This tension can arise the awareness of Venus, particularly next to Fomalhaut, to the psychic awareness of what corrupts the frequency of tantric joy, which is extortion calls. Yes, the moon is applying to be Hade's moon, but in several days the moon will conjoin Venus and Rahu, and we may have an election for a talisman. It's still Moon Rahu, but it's also Venus Rahu. So if you manage to catch Moon Rahu with from Sagittarius, then fantastic. If not, that can be a consideration for talisman. Anyways, Lilith is going to continue towards squaring the nodes. I saw a lot of women talking about how spirituality in the world, even the history. There was a lady, I would need to find this video because she was beginning to go through the history of religion and how when we were grain-based and we began to hoard grain, it was more patriarchal. But I think in societies where they raped, then the grain was inflammatory. And they began to hoard. In societies where they didn't rape, then they preserved gnosis. In societies where, so she would say it is grain-based societies, and I would say it is rape-based societies, because Aries is innovation. And when we rape, we are in stagnation, not innovation. This is why when Uranus conjoined Aries, we had both the Me Too, but also one of the complaints that I was posing around that time is that the science moves in the progress of basically an Italian strike. And this is because of the industrialized slavery and rape based, and also plagiarism, because the rape was to plagiarize, let's say, the students and the TAs and so on. So they would let students develop ideas and then plagiarize the ideas of the students, particularly where there were extortion and trafficking cults, kind of like Epstein. Sabrina is so lucky that I hope she didn't get the funding from Epstein. I think she's so lucky not to have gotten the funding from Epstein, because she would just be plagiarized. Yes, she was writing to him to see if he would fund her research. I'm not going to refer to the dates of the correspondence. But to her defense, she also applied for a grant in particle physics where she didn't want to do that so much. And then she got the grant and she said, no, I don't want to do that. So, yes. Yeah, things happen. Yeah. And all of those, I don't know, Epstein ring affiliated perfumes. Allegedly. I haven't checked the 30 million files yet. More to say. Moon is decreasing. So it is a completion phase. Um, and Moon ingress to Aquarius. Now, a little bit about this topic of the secret societies showing themselves more evident that they are all about power and not about science. And even if this in the science of power, why am I saying that? Because Saturn ruling over Pluto in Aries, we are rethinking power. And Aries is the Logos. Aries understands that if we honor sovereignty, we'll have less problems. It wasn't so until now. Now, some understand it quicker, some not. Now, but we have to also think about it. Right now, we had previously waging war against the class division or the caste revision in India. What compatible process is, for example, going against class division in UK? Now, as the Indians begin to awaken, something needs to take away the old. Either they're going to rethink the caste division, or they're going to have the British civilizing them while trying to maintain the class division, which ends up in more decentralization of the regime. Yeah. So yes, absolutely. So this is, if I think about, let's say, Israel and Netherlands. So what is very Dutch that can keep Dutch people from progressing? Being by the rules. That liberation from the rules was only through very orderly Masonic rite that was basically rape ritual. Now, if they're not liberated from that, unfortunately, the other, or not unfortunately, the other brotherhoods that have strict rules and violate human rights by the guise of the rules, are having to act. The equivalent of having to act normal is to wear hijab. It's basically, yes, and that can really, really undermine House of Orange. But if they tackle this, then they basically abolish their own internal apartheid. Israel, not the same expression of things. What is big issue in Israel right now? Because Israel is really transforming. Like people going against the doubt in the intelligence, the doubt in Ministry of Health. Israelis are going against the Templars while they're thinking to build a new temple. So if they deal with that internally, I hope, because again, it's kind of like if the Jews don't abolish their ritual abuse satanic inquisition, then the Christians have to convert them and say what Inquisition we do it better, and they say what they wear a cross, and then all Jews begin to wear a cross, and until today we don't know if all of them are not Jews. So yeah. But let's talk some shit about Christians. Mary Magdalene, yes, was not a whore. Kali, Mahakali. What it is, there is a goddess, I don't know if it's not Saraswati, that she holds her head amputated, she holds her head, 3 streams of blood come from her neck. I don't remember what is the name of that goddess. And yes, as so, and she's basically goddess to transmute the sexual energy, and people that worship this goddess worship, they basically, I think they vow to celibacy or something like that. So it's kind of like nuns. they can do it better. But also the horrification of adult consenting sex, and the glorification of rape as sacred whoredom. If I think what is the antidote to that, well, the Inquisition was only abolished by secular people. So, rational mind. To beat Christianity, you have to basically outdo stupid, but not with stupidity. It was the secular judges that abolished the Inquisition executors. I don't know what oil, gas, or minerals company was active back then, but Spanish ran out of gold for Vogue. Some went. I don't know if it's the same times. Let's say Inquisition o'clock. Wait, Spanish Inquisition. Yes.